What's up, everybody? Big day today for CBS. Tell you about that in a second. Adam Azer and Heath coming. What's up, Heath? You ready for a big day? I know it's Tuesday as we record, but pretend it's Wednesday.
Fired up, my man. Going to raise some money for St. Jude. It's going to be fantastic. 6 hours of fantasy football coverage, 40 guests from around the industry, and you are going to be on the show until midnight. That's fantastic.
Yep, I am on 8 to midnight. The show starts at 6. Again, I'll tell you more about that. Let me preview what's coming up today. We're going to talk about the RB Dead Zone, and if it's actually good this year, I kind of feel like it is. We'll talk about that. We're going to update our position preview. So let's say you just passed Heath and Jamie will be on in a little bit. He's doing HQ right now. Let's say you just passed Heath and Jamie on the street, and you said, oh, hey, real quick, Heath or Jamie, I got 2 minutes. Or do you have 2 minutes? Can you tell me how to draft quarterbacks?
And I would like for somebody to walk up to Jamie and say, real quick, Jamie, I've got 2 minutes. Tell me everything you know about running back.
Yeah, and we'll see. And we'll just sum it up for you. But also what has changed. We did the previews several weeks ago, and things have changed since then. Meanwhile, today is the day. The 2021 Draftathon supporting St. Jude is here. Tune into the 6-hour stream for nonstop fantasy advice. Even if you've already drafted, we'll have advice for you. 6 p.m. to midnight Eastern tonight. That's Wednesday, September 1st. We're going to be joined, as Heath mentioned, by, he said 40. I've got 30 in my copy here. 30 industry friends. I think Heath just has more friends than I do. Michael Florio, Liz Loza, many, many more. Nando DeFino, Jake Seeley. Looking forward to it. I'm going to make Adam rank like me by the time he leaves the show. And we'll get you prepared for your fantasy drafts. And we're raising money for St. Jude. You can watch the entire stream on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday, and also the first 2 hours are on CBS Sports HQ. Okay, ready, Heath? Ready for the show?
Oh, yeah.
A few things on my mind. Number one, am I crazy, or is the RB Dead Zone kind of sexy this season? Ben, what do you think?
I mean, it's pretty solid. There's some good young options in the middle.
Oh, Ben Gretsch just hopping in here. Whoa, special guest out of nowhere. What's up, Ben Gretsch?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Well, Heath had no idea. I was like,
fantastic.
You let out a little noise that got me laughing pretty good.
I was like, we can't talk about the RB Dead Zone without our old friend Ben Gretsch. What are you up to these days, Ben?
I'm just writing my Substack. I'm, following all the stuff you guys are doing. Just did an auction with the guys, trying to defend a title that I took down last year with, you weren't in it, but Chris and Heath and Jamie and Dave and the whole crew. So
picked almost an entire team of RB Dead Zone.
RB Dead Zone players.
Did you really?
Yeah. So it's a 2 running back, 2 receiver, 2 flex league, 0.5 PPR, pretty shallow benches like most of the CBS leagues. And so I think in that format, being a little heavier on RB, and it's also the salary cap format. So you have, the potential for more running backs on the, more depth at the running back position. I got a bunch of guys in higher rounds, I guess, but I still got DJ Moore and T Higgins and TJ Hawkinson and a couple upside pass catchers too.
Well, I was just thinking that I really don't mind the quote unquote dead zone, which you can define it for us here, but obviously not everyone's gonna pan out, and you get deeper into it and it's worse. But I think it was I did a mock draft today, Tuesday. I was on the Fantasy Pros podcast if anybody wants to take a listen. And I had the first pick, so I guess it was the end of round 4, beginning of round 5. There was a run. I would have been happy with any of them. It was Myles Gaskin. No. Sorry. Miles Sanders, Mike Davis, Gus Edwards. He may have been first of that trio. Then I took Myles Gaskin, then Darrell Henderson, Chase Edmonds, and one other guy that I'm forgetting.
DeAndre Swift?
No, he was gone at that point.
Jacobs?
You know what? I think it may have been Damian Harris. May have. I'm not sure. Jacobs was gone at that point. But I was like, this isn't really so bad. I don't have a problem with this group here. So what do you think? What is the dead zone, and what do you think about it this year? Is it better this year than it has been in the past?
So the dead zone broadly from the stuff that I did at CBS in 2019 is just looking at ceiling outcomes for running backs across the various draft points in the draft. And part of the reason we're looking at ceiling is especially in PPR. I mean, this is the big caveat. It's PPR. Basically, from the beginning of the draft to the end of the draft, the average scoring for wide receivers is going to be higher than running backs at any point. And a big part of that is because of the running back bust rate. Now, we do know running backs have these monster ceilings. They can be absolute league winner type players. You can make those picks in the first couple of rounds too, because when I looked at this, the first couple of rounds are where a lot of these really high ceiling running back seasons come from. We're pretty good at identifying who the top maybe 15 running backs are every year, 20 running backs. But when you get about the halfway of round 3 and into round 4 especially, we get into this range every year where we have guys that we're projecting for a lot of volume, probably not a lot else in their profile that we like, maybe not long-term, they maybe don't look like long-term great athletes or great players at the position. Like Mike Davis is a really interesting one, right? Like he's a 29-year-old, has never really handled a huge workload. I think last year he had about 150 carries or something, and that was his career high. We expect him to have a really big role in week 1. The question with guys like him, and historically when you look at the dead zone, will he be a 17-week stud? And historically, a lot of those guys that are pushed up into that 5th, 6th, 7th round range, basically because of projected volume going into week 1, they don't actually end up maintaining that role the whole year. And if they do, they kind of are like floor plays. They don't have huge ceilings. And so there's this opportunity cost argument where there's receivers in those ranges that can be stars. That's where Stephon Diggs went last year.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just clouding. Maybe my judgment's just clouded because as I say now every show, I hate the wide receiver position this year. Because all of the good ones are on the same like 5 NFL teams.
Well, and I do think,
I guess what I'm saying, sorry, just to finish, maybe I just don't feel like I'm passing up on a lot of league winning wide receivers in that range. So I'm okay with, well, I felt that way last year that the wide receivers were better. This year, I feel like I'm not passing up on the great wide receiver breakout possibilities maybe. And I'm okay with those running backs there, Heath.
Well, it's because, as you say, all the good wide receivers are on the same team. Well, they're all on like 4 teams. The thing is with those guys, like the most likely outcome is 1 or 2 of those guys are going to emerge from each one and eventually hit. It's just hard to guess which one for me at the wide receiver position. As far as the running back dead zone, I think there are more backs like DeAndre Swift and Myles Gaskin and Chase Edmonds. Maybe I don't even know if Chase Edmonds fits because he feels so much younger than he actually is. But younger backs who we think have pass catching roles that are in that zone. And that's not generally what you find there, right, Ben?
You're right. Completely not. There's been a pretty significant change as this has gotten more popular. Some backs early in the offseason and best ball contests are getting pushed up, sort of like, it's almost like the reaction to the dead zone was to draft the running backs earlier. So they weren't going in those rounds, but then you're just drafting the same player, several rounds earlier, which is not necessarily smart. The way I think about it is this, and he put it perfectly. The ones that are going in the dead zone because they have a bunch of opportunity in front of them, but we don't necessarily like their sort of long view talent projection. That's the Mike Davises. That's the, unfortunately, Miles Sanders and David Montgomery are 2 guys that they're still pretty young, but they've also both already shown us pretty solid seasons. Miles Sanders' rookie season was really good. He was a first-round pick last year. David Montgomery, the end of last year, was great. The fact that drafters aren't buying into them and this sort of wisdom of the crowds element of ADP typically has been a bad sign with guys like that, that we've seen them play and we're still saying, they have this opportunity in front of them. I'm still not that excited about it. But the flip side is the running backs, and Travis Etienne was the best example of this. It's so unfortunate that he got injured, but the running backs that are stuck in the dead zone because we can't see the projected role, but we'd otherwise have them very high. And I was always comparing Etienne to Najee Harris. He went 1 pick after him, very similar draft capital. He was the more explosive of the 2 as prospects. Some people like Harris more. Certainly, I liked Etienne more. The way I would frame it is if Etienne would have went to the Steelers, he would have been going in the 2nd round too. But the only reason he was going in the 5th or whatever was because of this uncertain role in Jacksonville. And the main thing with the dead zone, that, as I see it, is like we shouldn't get too comfortable projecting running back workloads. We know there's going to be chaos. The guys like Mike Davis, who look like they have no competition, they're up in that range basically because we're projecting so much volume. That can be problematic. The guys like Etienne, or now Javonte Williams is the better example, who we can't project a lot of work for, but we do think in the long term could be a very good player, and he's probably being held down just because we don't really know who he is. He's like the dead zone target to me. I mean, that's where the breakouts from the dead zone that have hit have been young guys like that, 1st, 2nd year players.
Yeah, I draft him a lot, but I don't think I'd take him at the 4-5 turn necessarily. Then again,
Sure.
I'm not sure I'd get him at the 6-7 turn. He's probably more of the 5-6 turn. So if you really want him, you might have to reach if you have an early pick. But what about, who do you like? Do you like Gus Edwards? Do you like Myles Gaskin? Do you like Mike Davis? It doesn't sound like you're going to be drafting a lot of Mike Davis. Do you like Chase Edmonds? Do you like Darrell Henderson now? And it's not, we're not looking at Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell and Mark Ingram from last year, right? Those guys,
right?
Like on their last legs. I don't know that, I think it's better this year, basically. But
yeah, you're absolutely right. There's not as many old guys. I would say the ones that I like are the ones that are younger. It could be first-time breakouts because, again, the ones that came out of the dead zone historically have been, it's way back to Arian Foster's first breakout year. It was Ray Rice's second year. It was Jonathan Taylor last year was a pretty good example. He ended up in the third round late in draft season, but was very good down the stretch, helped people win championships down the stretch, struggled in the first half of the year, certainly. But you're looking at guys like that could work into a bigger role throughout the season. So Darrell Henderson's kind of interesting. He is a third-year player, but he hasn't broke out yet. The difference I would make between him and Sanders and Montgomery, not even necessarily age, because I think they're all third-year players, right? But Sanders and Montgomery have already shown the ceiling in similar roles to what they're in, and they're not being bought into. Typically, it's the guys that aren't being bought into because we haven't seen it yet, and so they're first-time breakouts. So you could say like Gus Edwards fits in that, but then that's where I would get into. I don't really like his receiving role, and I don't know that his ceiling is particularly high. But the ones that I do like in that range would be like maybe Henderson. Edmonds is sort of interesting, but not a guy that I take a ton of necessarily. I typically just wait till right behind the dead zone, and I'm looking at Trey Sermon. I'm looking at AJ Dillon, guys that could potentially work into some huge opportunity if there's some shakeups in their backfield and could be a lot better than we maybe realize now. So the idea would be they would be top picks in future seasons, right?
Mm-hmm. I think we need a name for we need to name an award or a running back thing moving forward after Chris Carson, because he's always in the dead zone and always outperforms his ADP, and his ADP never goes up.
Yeah. He's a tough one too, because
maybe that's what David Montgomery will be. Maybe he will be the Chris Carson. And then the other clarification I need, because I've been trying to convince people of this and they don't buy it. If I just take David Montgomery and Chris Carson at the end of the second round, then it's okay, right? They're not in the dead zone anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, it's kind of backward logic, right? If we start taking them higher, then they're not dead zone guys anymore. But it's just a worse pick. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I think it's I think maybe that drafters are just getting smarter, so maybe we won't fall into the same traps that we used to fall into.
I think what Ben would agree with is that every year is different, so we shouldn't look at past years' strategies and necessarily think the same thing is going to work out. And I'm making a joke about something that I think Ben wrote just today.
Yeah.
Well, I would say
that was good. I was like, did he read what I
wrote? In previous years, Mike Davis would be a third-round pick. I think anyway, he would have been the Alex Collins,
well, Josh Jacobs is a great example of that. He was a 1-2 turn pick last year. His situation isn't that much different, and now he's going in the 5th round, 6th round. I don't know.
Like him because Heath likes him. Heath does not like him at his ADP, which is end of the 3rd round. But if you can get him around later, end of the 4th round.
I mean, there's formats you can get him in the 5th. I mean, it's crazy.
You like that, Jacobs?
I mean, again, it feels like a floor pick. I mean, I feel like we've seen that we don't have the real ceiling there. He's not going to actually get the receiving work. And I mean, we saw Derrick Henry last year. He was amazing. Ran for 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, whatever it was, 17 TDs, I think. And he averaged 20.9 PPR points per game. Cook and Kamara were both 3 or 4 PPR points per game higher. So like that's the ceiling out of this type of back. You run for 2,000 yards and more than a touchdown a game, and you can't even get within 3 points per game of those true dual threat types. It's tricky.
And that's the tricky thing, because I think you can say the exact same thing for Nick Chubb. And you could have said the same thing for J.K. Dobbins, but drafters had decided they were worth the earlier pick. Whereas Jacobs was 2 rounds later. I kind of felt like Jacobs was just a discount Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, he is. He very much is. This is why I'm not drafting much Nick Chubb in the first couple rounds. or any. I have not taken him in a single league.
All right, we can wrap up this discussion here, Heath. I guess the question is, are you more comfortable this year than maybe last year grabbing a running back in that range and maybe pivoting, not necessarily having to get a running back and two people might start running back, but you know what I'm saying? I don't want to say going 0 RB or anything like that, but are you more comfortable with a running back in this range, and who are some of the ones that you keep drafting?
I am more comfortable with 0 RB, but I am also more comfortable with backs that are in this range for sure. There are more, like DeAndre Swift is one of my favorite draft values in the 4th round. So like, obviously there are some guys in that range. I think I just wrote my breakouts column, and some of the major breakout candidates are now 4th round picks, where I agree they would have been, or 5th round picks, where they would have been 3rd round picks in the past. I like Gaskin quite a bit.
Gaskin's the hardest one.
I agree. I can't do it.
He's the hardest
him and Chase Edmonds. If I had to actually publish rankings, I would be like nauseous. I would probably throw up. I'd be so nervous to I can't make the decision. I change every single time I draft. Gaskin or Edmonds, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna
it's easy. Gaskin is younger.
Edmonds.
And one team brought in James Conner and the other one brought in Malcolm Brown.
James Conner will get hurt, as he always does. It's a 2-horse race in Arizona. It's possibly 3-horse race in Miami. Yeah. And hey, Jamie, look who's here. Look who's here.
Hey,
Ben just became a running back guy.
We're talking about the dead zone. All right, Gretch, give me your thoughts on
dead zone. He lives in the dead zone now.
I mean, like, what timing? Adam texted me during our draft and asked me to pop on to talk about the dead zone while I'm in a salary cap draft with you guys, drafting every dead zone guy I can get.
All right, give me your 30 seconds on Myles Gaskin, and we'll move on to our next topic, Ben.
I mean, it's basically what I was saying about Montgomery and Miles Sanders, where we did sort of see the ceiling in this spot, and he's still going in the dead zone. They're not necessarily, drafters are not necessarily buying into him. That's a risk. But then at the same time, you have the flip side where they didn't really bring in competition, like he said. There's a little bit of like shades of Arian Foster type thing where most guys with bad draft capital don't have the opportunity to keep the position. We saw it with James Robinson. They bring in a first rounder. They seem to kind of trust Myles Gaskin, and I don't think he's going to be as good as Arian Foster long term. But why can't a 7th rounder just be a long term good player at the NFL level? And so I don't know. I mean, I think he could have monster upside too. I think he's like, his range is so wide.
Okay, Ben. Well, you can stick around for a little while if you want. Up to you, man.
Sure. Jamie just got here.
All right, we'll do the rest.
Sure you're having lunch in the middle of our salary cap draft. Are you done?
I did. Yeah, I finished that up. That's how I locked in Jenny McKissick. That was a great nomination.
All right. So,
by the way, Adam.
Okay. Yes.
If you think that Dan Schneider hates you, he loves Ben. Every player that Ben got, Ben, that's such a great buy. Ben, that was awesome. Ben, great. It was. Does he still work here? And you like gotta, massage the ego a little bit. Like, what was going on there?
I felt like he was actually a little bit disappointed in Ben. Like, he came in with this expectation that Ben was going to draft the Ben Gretsch team, and then he just kept picking running backs. And Dan's like, "What's going on?"
It was like fanboy all over the place.
I still got DJ Moore and Laviska Shenault. Let's be clear.
That's right, you did.
All right, let's go to our next thing. So this is related. Jamie and I were talking about this on the bonus podcast we did on Mac Jones and Michael Thomas. If you have a late pick in a 12-team league with the trends that we might be starting to see now, are you kind of screwed at running back, right? Because I feel like all of the running backs that we just talked about, there's a strong chance they're off the board by the end of round 5. And what I'm talking about is Gus Edwards, Darrell Henderson in some order, Myles Gaskin, Chase Edmonds, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, maybe Damian Harris at this point. Who are you left with if you're going to take a running back at the end of round 5, 60th overall, or 57th, 58th, 59th, 60th overall, something like that? Jamie, who are they realistically looking at, do you think, right now?
I honestly think, you got to know your league. Like, we do a lot of these analyst drafts where running backs get pushed up, especially now that Ben's all in on running backs. But they all get pushed up, and, then it's just a matter of how do you pivot. But I think if you're looking at it, you got to, I think, be comfortable. And this is where I think the modified RB or whatever, people are calling it, where you take one guy in the first round or two.
Hero RB,
whatever it's called. You take running back early, and then just kind of stockpile the position, after you load up at your other positions, if you don't want to buy into these guys. But, Chase Edmonds and Javonte Williams and Kareem Hunt and trying to think of the guys that are going. Darrell Henderson now. Mostert.
You think these guys will be there or will not be there?
They will definitely be there. They should be there. And if people are taking them too soon, then let them have them. Then you should be left with a lot of good receiver value, and you should be able to just throttle your league that way.
Yeah, and like CBS ADP is pretty running back heavy in the first 5 rounds. But if you look at our ADP right now, like Darrell Henderson's dropped 16 spots in the last week, and he's in the middle of round 6. Mostert, Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Damian Harris may not be for long, but all after pick 60. So I think the odds are 1 or 2 of those guys are there. You just might not know which one. And the danger is if you get stuck with the 1 or 2 that you don't want any part of.
Okay, let's go to our next question then. And Ben, I'll give this to you. Why do people treat 2 QB leagues and Superflex leagues differently? Should they?
In what regard do the people treat them differently?
I feel like they don't go as QB heavy in Superflex leagues as they do in 2 QB leagues.
Oh,
this is anecdotal. I don't have a lot of it.
Here's a theory that I made up.
I think it's true.
I guess I haven't missed anything in the last several months. Adam just coming up.
This is not an Azer stat. This is an Azer theory.
Yeah. Why is it that people won't wear tennis shoes with blue jeans anymore?
Do you think that's true? Do you think people treat them differently?
I guess in 2 QB, because you have to play a quarterback, then you probably want to have 3. And if there's 12 teams, there's only 32 starters. Not everyone can have 3. So maybe there's a little more pressure to have one to fill out your bye weeks, or else you literally have to take a 0 during your bye weeks if you only have 2 starting quarterbacks. And some teams, basically 4 teams, will have to do that in a 12-team league. So maybe there's a little more of a constraint from that perspective. There's only 32 teams. But
have any of you ever played in a Superflex league where you have not intended to start a quarterback in the Superflex spot?
No.
Right. But what I'm saying is,
on buys. If I only have 2 starters, I'm
not saying how it plays out, but going into the draft process, always look to have.
Here's the question, right? You should be starting a quarterback in your Superflex spot. If you just peeked in on a 12-team 2 QB league of random fantasy football players, and then a 12-team Superflex league, do you think the quarterbacks would go as early in the Superflex league as they do in the 2 QB league?
Yeah,
I've never really seen much difference.
Yeah, I think it'd be the same.
Okay, good. Well, it should be, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my theory is that
I'm glad we resolved that one. Like, right off the top of the pot. Let's get that out of the way. Important before we get to the other stuff.
All right, Heath, last question. I'll let you start here. What should commissioners do about COVID spots, IR spots, pup lists, all those things? What should you do?
Exactly what you did last year. There's no reason to change it. It's not over. We're still dealing with it.
Maybe they didn't have a good system last year. Like, give me.
You should have minimum of 5 IR spots. Anyone on the COVID list, on IR, or on the PUP should be able to go onto the IR spot. And you should have waivers, first come, first serve waivers available on Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, which in my opinion really just means you should run waivers Wednesday morning, and then it should be first come, first serve after that. But if you want to do it in a different way, you can.
Okay.
Does that mean our Dynasty League is going to be first come, first serve on Wednesday?
Yep.
Let's go.
Now, we did something, though. We did something where I don't remember exactly how it worked, but if there was a game that was in jeopardy of being moved last year.
The replacement players, I never did that because I'm not that energetic of a commissioner.
We let people say, hey, if this game something, then start this guy.
I don't think the NFL is going to be moving games like they were last year. I don't know that will be as big of a concern, but
right.
I do think though it's kind of a good, fallback thing to have in place with the last minute inactives of, I forget what the receiver was. It was there a 3-name receiver for Jacksonville once upon a time?
Yeah, Mike Sims Walker.
Mike Sims Walker. I knew it was Mike Walker. I forgot there was a Sims in there. He was like a last minute scratch because he did something off the field and they didn't like him, and everybody was pissed off. It was a 4:00 game, and you couldn't you couldn't replace him if your lineup's locked at 12:55. And so I remember ever since then, like, do we designate like a replacement option prior to the game? And we did this last year because of COVID. I don't think there's a problem with that. You know, there's a rare situation where somebody gets hurt in pregame. Somebody gets, last minute scratch, especially deeper leagues where, you may be, scratching the bottom of a roster for somebody just to play and he's, inactive for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't mind it.
But you have to email the whole league, right? And you have to say, this guy is on my team. He's on my bench. If this one, if somebody gets it, all right, you can figure that out amongst yourselves, commissioners. But good ideas. Ben, thank you very much for joining us today, man. Always
Adam, I got to ask you before I go, what were you just drinking?
Water. Why?
Wasn't it colored? Oh,
it better not.
Wait, was it Heath that I saw take a drink of something that looked like beer? I was like, did I start drinking
what do
beer?
you got?
That was
Ben,
my juice.
Do you know what he did with the podcast league last night?
No.
He invites how many listeners were there? There was 11 and then two shared, so 13.
Yeah, that sounds right.
13 people to participate in this. You know how it works. A lot of people
10
their entries.
and 2 shared, 12.
Then he decides to give himself the first pick.
No, such a liar.
And then during the draft, he's like, "Hey, look, I have the best team."
Everything was a lie there. Jamie got the numbers wrong.
After the first pick, look I got the best roster. I mean, I'm the only one who has a player, and it's
It was
Christian
as soon as he got was it Jefferson and AJ Brown?
Yep.
I mean, imagine this: 14 teams. He gets McCaffrey, Jefferson, and AJ Brown. How are the rest of us competing?
Wow.
I'm
I'm proud of you for going receiver there, because that's the way you start that. Man, that's going to be
still somehow when the email came out, he had like the 7th best team.
Almost everybody in the league got an A. The CBS just loved our drafts. I got an A. JB got an A+. Yeah, we'll see it. We'll see how it goes. But McCaffrey, Jefferson, AJ Brown in a PPR league, that's a pretty good way to start. Good to hear from you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Good to see you guys.
See you, buddy.
Yeah, Ben.
All right. That's Ben Gretsch joining us. Now I'm going to tell you about Lightstream, everybody. You ever looked at your credit card statement and been shocked by the interest rate? Did you know you could actually roll all of your credit card debt into one monthly payment at a lower fixed interest rate? Lightstream is absolutely great with this, and you're going to get an even better rate when I give you the URL in just a little bit, but you can lower your interest rate and save with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. So rates start at 5.93% APR with autopay and excellent credit. And the rate is fixed, so it's never going to go up over the life of the loan. You can get a loan from $5,000 to $100,000, and there are no fees, and you can get your money as soon as the day you apply. The whole reasoning behind Lightstream, why they're doing this, is they think that people who have great credit deserve a better loan experience, and that's exactly what they deliver. So in addition to this already great rate from Lightstream, if you want a better rate, special interest rate discount, you go to lightstream.com/FFT. That is lightstream.com/FFT. Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 5.93% APR to 19.99% APR and include a 0.5% auto pay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/FFT for more information. So we had an email. That's a funny email. Take a quick break from fantasy talk here. Email today is from Christopher. I was listening to the podcast with my daughter after her softball practice. It was late, so we went to Arby's to grab something for the ride home. You guys were talking about RB5 and RB10. My daughter Quinn said, it's pretty funny that they are talking about Arby's right now, and we're in the drive-thru. I wonder what they're ordering. Cracked me up, figuring you guys would get a good laugh. Thanks for what you do. Yes, I like that. Now I want Arby's. Thank you. Do they still have Arby's near your office?
I don't think I've ever eaten at Arby's in my life.
Oh, beef and cheddar. Though they're like, I could eat 10 of them.
Yeah.
They're delicious and they're very light. And they remind me of fantasy football now. So thank you, Christopher, for that. Okay, your news and notes. New England released Cam Newton. Jamie and I did a bonus podcast on this on Tuesday. Heath, you want to give your reaction here? Jacoby Myers, the tight ends, the running backs, whatever.
Slight boost for Jacoby Myers, slight boost for Damian Harris, slight boost for James White, slight boost for the tight ends. Harris is the only one I'm drafting as a top 24, and he is right in that Gus Edwards range for me. Jonu's a borderline number 1 tight end. I can't decide if I actually want to put him inside my top 12, but I think there's a better chance now that one of the Patriots tight ends will be good. And I moved Nelson Aguilar into my top 150.
Okay, I thought this was interesting last year for James White. The first 5 games of the season, I think Jacoby Myers either did not play or played fewer than 10% or fewer of the snaps, basically completely uninvolved. Then once Myers started playing, James White averaged 3.8 targets and 2.8 catches per game. I really don't know that this matters, but I just want you to know I did the research. This is what
I think that's, Cam just doesn't have that in him to do that consistently.
Right.
I know he did it with McCaffrey, but it's different.
Yeah, and he loved Myers. He threw to him all the time. Okay, Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots is going to start the season on the PUP list. Anyone who starts on the PUP list has to miss at least the first 6 weeks of the year. So that would be Michael Thomas as well. Meanwhile, the Saints could miss 2 home games due to Hurricane Ida. They might be playing in other stadiums.
I think one is definitely safe. The second one's October 3rd, the Giants game.
Okay.
So if it's a month, it should, conceivably be okay. Obviously, they have bigger issues to deal with.
And Michael Thomas is going to start the season on the PUP list. And like he said earlier, you should be able to put PUP players on the IR. And the earliest he could return is week 7. This is what Baltimore offensive coordinator Greg Roman said. He said about Gus Edwards. Gus, he's our kind of guy. He's built for what we do. And he acknowledged that Edwards will have a bigger role. So when are we taking Gus Edwards? Let's have this discussion again. Heath?
Non-PPR at the round 3-4 turn. Full PPR in the second half of round 5.
Jamie?
I agree in non-PPR. I would take him as early as round 4 in PPR, though.
Okay. Stephen Ross, according to Mike Florio, really wants Deshaun Watson. And then there was a report that Houston probably won't trade Deshaun Watson and that he will be inactive every week this season. They're prepared to make him.
You can't trade for him for what they're asking without knowing what his status is. That's the problem.
And I guess there's some question about whether the CBA will allow them to make him inactive every week without any reason. So that could get interesting.
But why, though? They can make whoever they want inactive if they just don't want to play them.
I think it's there's something specifically in the CBA that says you can't use that as a form of discipline. With that, it has to be you have to be able to justify it for football reasons.
Yeah, we don't want him to get hurt because we want to trade him.
Yeah, and he doesn't play special teams, so just
right.
Make it
good point.
Green Bay left tackle David Bakhtiari is going to begin the season on the PUP list. So that's at least 6 weeks for their left tackle. Okay. Aaron Rodgers struggled without Bakhtiari last year. Listen to this. 4 games in the regular season. Only 35 points against Houston. 27 against Minnesota. Only 36 against San Francisco. And only 33 fantasy points. He only threw 15 touchdowns in the 4 games that he played without left tackle David Bakhtiari.
Go through those 4 games. Houston, bad defense.
Yeah, I know. Houston, Minnesota, San Francisco, Chicago in week 17, he threw 4 touchdowns. 2 postseason games, though, against the Rams and the Bucks. I think he scored 29 or more fantasy points in both of them.
He'll be okay, but it's not good.
Yeah, in all seriousness, I mean, they are going to have 2 rookies starting on their offensive line and no left tackle. I think they'll start a left tackle, but no David Bakhtiari for the first at least
2 spots where you'd like to have some security, left tackle and center, and they're both new.
Washington released Peyton Barber. Someone told me to go add Justin Jefferson on Twitter. That was good. The Saints released Devontae Freeman. Joe Judge did not commit to Evan Ingram being ready for week 1.
Or Saquon Barkley. They're going to make a decision next week.
Okay. I thought I saw another thinking. Kenny Golladay practiced in individual drills for the first time since he got hurt. So hooray. Trey Lance is going to miss about a week with a chip in his finger. Supposed to have hold on. Supposed to have a chip on your shoulder. Okay. Minnesota acquired Chris Herndon from the Jets, tight end Chris Herndon.
It's time. It's finally time.
And Tyler Conklin returned to practice. Any interest in a Vikings tight end here? That's not Irv Smith.
How about in our salary cap draft? Dave was down early to his dollar bids, so he was just trying to get anybody that he can get, that makes some sense. So he picked up Irv Smith. And then the trade happened in the middle of the mock draft or middle of the salary cap. And then Tommy Tran, one of our hosts on CBS Sports, he took Chris Herndon for $1 also.
I think the most interested I'm going to be in anyone involved in this situation is Tyler Kroft.
What about Tyler Conklin?
I think I'm more interested in Tyler Kroft than Tyler Conklin.
Okay, so Tyler
The
Conklin.
only way these guys are relevant is if Irv Smith's out for the season.
Yeah, and this isn't going to hurt Herb Smith when he gets back, right? Chris Herndon.
I mean, unless Herndon is that tight end we saw as a rookie, but if you're chasing that still, good luck to you.
I was more worried. I don't know when they're doing the surgery. I was more worried this was representative of their fear that maybe Irv Smith wasn't coming back.
I think they just probably wanted to get ahead on not having to go through a waiver process on Chris Herndon because he was going to get cut.
Philadelphia waived Travis Fulgham, and Houston is going to go RBBC, running back by committee, which we pretty much already knew. So the other
I
topic,
thought they're going to go RBBS.
running back by
Sucks.
okay, could have been a lot of things.
Sure, whatever other S word you'd like.
Let's update our position previews. So as I build this earlier, Jamie, as you're walking down the street, someone recognizes you and says, "Hey, Jamie, you got 2 minutes? How do I draft quarterback?" And I also want to know what has changed, if anything, since we did this preview several weeks ago. These position previews, we did them in early August. So let's start with quarterback. Jamie, give me your overview on how to draft quarterback.
I think if you're so inclined to buy into one of the top 6 guys, you should make it a priority for yourself, but don't reach. So don't take Mahomes before round 3. Don't take Josh Allen before round 4. Don't take the other 3 guys that go after him in terms of Kyler and Dak and Lamar, not in that order necessarily, before round 5, and then Russell Wilson in round 6. But I think after that, there's a big separation. Not a big separation. There's separation. So if you're going to look to buy into one of those guys, 3 through 6 is where I would start to consider it. And then I would almost just wait for the rest of the group, whoever you like best, of Jalen Hurts or Tom Brady or Justin Herbert, and get them at a value. You can wait on Matthew Stafford. You can wait on Joe Burrow. You should take a flyer if you take any of those guys on Trey Lance or Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence as well. And if you completely miss and you want to pair one of those youngsters with a veteran, Ben Roethlisberger would be my favorite option at the veteran spot.
Okay, Heath, what do you think about quarterback? Hey, Heath, you got 2 minutes? I know you're walking to dinner with your family right now, but give me your QB.
I would say a lot of the same things that Jamie just said. It's still okay to wait on quarterback. If I was pairing, and I made this choice last night, and I think I'll have to move them up in my rankings a little bit because of it. But if I'm pairing with somebody with the young quarterbacks, I think it's Kirk Cousins, just because I like his opening schedule quite a bit. I think he might have to throw a little bit. But yes, you can still do that. But I wouldn't hesitate to take Patrick Mahomes in round 3. I'm personally fine with Lamar in round 4. I would just tell someone, you're probably not going to get Josh Allen if you're listening to my advice, because he seems to go second, and he often goes around ahead of the rest of those guys. One of Dak or Russell Wilson almost always falls to round 6 in our leagues. Mm-hmm. Almost always goes 6th and a round later than everybody else. I like that guy. I like whoever goes last amongst the Brady, Rodgers, Tannehill, Hurts group.
Yeah, and that's Hurts by far in ADP for us. Hurts is going 91st. Joe Burrow has been a real faller during the draft process, but perhaps maybe a little bit too far. He's now going 107th in CBS.
I almost put Burrow now in that, and it's not. I don't know that there's any reason not to. I almost put Burrow in the same range as the Lawrence Fields Lance group.
He's right ahead of them for me.
He was always at the back end of the top 12 or 13 or however many guys you feel like are true QB1s this year. But has he gotten closer to the bench stashes? Let's see what we got here. Or is he still part of the I'm comfortable with him as my first quarterback?
I mean, so and we're in this league, so you guys can clearly steal whoever I'm going to mention from me. But like Burrow's the only quarterback I drafted in our magazine league, and Fields is available. So I'm going to put in a claim for Fields to have both of them just to see how it plays out. But I would want to have a second quarterback with Burrow. I don't necessarily feel the same about the guys that I have ranked ahead of him. So Burrow's 13 for me. I don't think it's a problem to pair Stafford with somebody else or Hurts with somebody else or Tannehill or whoever you want to, however high up you want to go. But I do think if you draft Burrow, you want to have a second quarterback. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to go with him by himself.
And I think I've taken Jalen Hurts in almost every league I'm in so far. And I also feel like with him, you want a second quarterback. For me, sometimes that is Burrow. Last night for the podcast league, it was Roethlisberger that I paired him with. And I think I'll just sum it up by saying this is kind of a weird year in that it looks like you should probably get a top 12. You should try to get a top 12 quarterback. It just seems like 12 happens to be the number in a group, you know. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I know obviously.
Yeah, I do think though that, you know, we're going to get to the middle of the season and we're going to probably revisit this conversation. Why didn't we draft Trey Lance higher or Justin Fields higher because of what they're capable of doing? But I think it's also beyond those guys. It is the veterans. Like Heath says Cousins, I say Roethlisberger. Throw Jameis in there now because of his ability to hopefully, you know, do some great things in the Saints offense. Matt Ryan still has two very good weapons at his disposal and may have to throw a ton as well. You know, so there are some guys still that you can look at and say, I don't necessarily have to wait on Baker Mayfield or Derek Carr or those guys. You know, that it's not waiting for them.
Yeah.
It's more looking at it as there are still some good veterans. And I wouldn't be surprised if middle of the season, Mac Jones maybe is a streamer. Zach Wilson maybe is a streamer, you know, because of what those guys have to do.
No, I know.
Like, it's a stretch.
But that's going to happen at any position. But I just thought it was interesting that it just seems like there are 12 this year on the nose that feel like
I'd say there's 13 because I still think Burrow is towing the line enough.
I just think you get one of those 12 or you plan on taking one of the young guys and a veteran.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that. That's what I did last night.
Thanks, Heath. Hey, appreciate your time, man.
It was way more than 2 minutes. Please don't bother me on the street again.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll find out how Jamie and Heath are approaching running back this year and who they are frequently drafting.
Well, if quarterback went quick, running back's going to be
running back would be easy, right? Okay. Running backs right after this. Time to talk running backs. Heath, give me the quick overview on how to draft running backs.
There's actually only 9 running backs that I feel really good about as my number 1 running back. And I think they should all go in the first 12 to 13 picks. And then there's a little break amongst wide receivers. And then there's another, you know, I think 12-ish running backs that you feel good about as number 2s. And then you get into that range in the 4th, 5th round where you have to decide who am I comfortable with amongst Myles Gaskin, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, that whole large group of borderline number 2s. There's a lot of those guys this year. I do think unless you're picking in the last 3 picks and you have the ability to start with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce, this is a good year to get at least one running back early. And then there are a lot of running backs after round 6 that have a combination of either upside or floor. I like to pair like a Javonte Williams with a James White or Giovanni Bernard. You could do the same thing with Trey Sermon or Michael Carter. So that part's not that much different. There's also maybe an increase of guys that were in that Latavius Murray-ish role last year where they may have flex appeal when the starter's healthy, and then they have big-time upside if the starter gets hurt. A.J. Dillon, probably the most, other than Kareem Hunt, who's in a different range, but A.J. Dillon's probably the highest upside of that group.
Yeah, and we've talked about also in a full PPR league, the pass-catching running backs just seem to be completely overlooked. So if you just need someone to plug in to get you 10-ish points, James White, Giovanni Bernard, maybe Nyheim Hines, there are a few of them. McKissick, thank you. I know I was forgetting someone. Jamie, your thoughts on running back?
If I have a pick in the first 5 spots, I'm taking a running back. You know the 5 names. I'm more inclined to go receiver on the way back, similar to what you did in the podcast league, because I think once you get to the back end of the 2nd round and you've now passed, unless they fall, but the Gibson, Mixon, Chubb, Najee Harris group, because I think that's where the cutoff is, then it's in your best interest to take 2 receivers there and wait out the running back group in that rounds 4 through 6 range. If I'm picking at the back end of the 1st round, I'm more inclined to go running back, because I could probably get 2 of those guys, and the receiver depth that's still going to be there in rounds 3, 4, and 5. You can still get 3 very good ones, 3 potential top 24 receivers as well. So middle is kind of, you know, the iffy spot. You know, if you're in picks 6 through 8 or 9. Where you can consider Devontae Adams, obviously Travis Kelce, then it kind of changes things. I probably go one of those guys in a running back in round 2. But if I'm picking early, I'm looking running back, receiver. If I'm picking late, I'm looking running back.
Okay. And honestly, I think we spent so much time talking about the RB dead zone that that probably answers some questions. That's good strategies to start your teams. Okay, wide receiver. Heath, what do you got?
There are 2 first-round wide receivers in Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. There's a handful of guys you could take in the 2nd round. Then really the 3, 4, 5 range is where there's just a bunch of low end number 1, high end number 2 wide receivers to feast on. And that's where the whole idea of the running back dead zone came from, because wide receivers in that 3 through 5 range have been so productive. But it doesn't stop there. It's still very, very deep. I think the thing I would say, if you want to load up on running back, tight end, and quarterback, you can do that as long as you get one wide receiver. It's very hard in round 5 or 6 or later to find a guy that you can actually believe could be a number 1 wide receiver, but you can go all the way to round 10 and find guys that you can believe could be number 2 wide receivers. Mm-hmm. So get at least one wide receiver. I'm happy with 4 or 5 of them the first 6 rounds if you can start that many in a PPR league, but get at least one for sure. Jamie, wide receiver.
Yeah, very similar to what Heath said. I don't think you have to reach at that position. It depends on your comfort level. If you want to come out of your first 2 rounds with one of the, maybe not the first 2 rounds, but maybe the first 30 picks, 30 overall picks of, the upper echelon guys like Heath mentioned, Adams and Tyreek. The next group, which I think is fairly awesome, of Ridley and AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, that group of guys. The next group, though, is just so robust, where this is where I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun drafting wide receivers, with Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, to the next group of Robert Woods and CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett. You throw all those names in there, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, the Bucks guys. I mean, we could go on and on. Then the next group, which is, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, the other Steelers guys, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Boyd, the Bengals guys, I guess, like it's kind of like, you're going down a sliding scale that, each plateau is very good players. And like he said, now we have Jacoby Myers and Marcus Callaway and the Jets guys and Marquise Brown and, these guys that are still sitting there at the bottom, Michael Pittman, all these pretty solid wide receivers that can still jump up a couple of spots, a couple of levels, but they may not be, top 10 caliber players unless things just work out the right way. So this is why you don't have to reach at the receiver spot. It's nice to have Adams and Hill. It's nice to have Ridley and Brown. It's nice to have all those guys that are ranked at the top, but you still have a pretty good receiving core if you buy in at the right time.
And because what I keep saying about the talent being so bunched together on same NFL teams with Dallas and with Tampa Bay and with Cincinnati and with Pittsburgh in particular, I do feel like I really don't want to pass up a round 2 wide receiver, or maybe if I have an early pick, an early round 3 wide receiver. But I guess a top 12 guy, wherever McLaurin and Allen Robinson, wherever McLaurin is for you guys, or wherever he is in ADP.
Mid-round 3.
Yeah, mid-round 3. So that means if I have a late round 3 pick, I'm not going to get Terry McLaurin, and if I don't go wide receiver with my round 1 or 2 pick.
Well, and that's the ideal spot to take at least one. It's so
yeah,
almost always Adams, Tyreek, or Diggs or Hopkins is there at one of those 2 picks.
But let me ask you this, Adam, because you keep bringing this up, and it's certainly valid and makes a ton of sense. But would it shock you tremendously if, with what the Bills did, if Gabriel Davis is better and the addition of Emmanuel Sanders? I know that they're in so different parts of their careers that we haven't seen Davis do anything amazing consistently yet, and Sanders seems like he's aging. But with Beasley there, that if those guys just take away from Diggs, where it's like the same situation of the Steelers guys negating themselves, or in the case of I just lost my train of thought.
Hopkins, Hopkins, I'm actually avoiding.
That was the one I was saying. Hopkins, with Rondale Moore and AJ Green, with those guys spreading the ball around. Like, I know you keep bringing this up, but should it be more of a concern for those guys as well? And not that's the same, but Devontae Adams, with what the reports are on Valdez-Scantling and stupid Randall Cobb coming back, and Amari Rodgers being there, like those guys getting more opportunities. Like we're so used to these guys dominating targets. Maybe they don't.
I don't have that concern with Adams and Diggs. I do have,
and I don't think people should, but it's just worth mentioning if you're going to keep.
Right. There are no sure things, and that's the thing with the running backs too. I mean, there's no sure things with Joe Mixon or Antonio Gibson or Najee Harris or Saquon Barkley and whatnot. So I like, if I have a late pick, I like starting running back receiver, but I do not want my philosophy to be the official philosophy of this podcast. So please disagree with me all you want.
I think he probably shares that philosophy, right? You'd like to go run running back, 1 receiver, depending on the start, whichever position.
Yeah, I'm more open to going with 2 wide receivers than Adam is. But yeah, I definitely would I agree. I'd like to get one of those top 12 wide receivers, because I think it's just really, really hard to find a top 12 wide receiver later in the draft or off the waiver wire.
Yeah, the thing that I like to do, like I said, when I'm picking at the back end of the first round, is I don't mind if my first two receivers are Tyler Lockett and Cooper Kupp if I started with Gibson and Harris. So if those are my first two picks, or Jonathan Taylor and
Hey, Jamie, if I can get Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, I can't sit there. I can't promise you that I'm taking Calvin Ridley or Stephon Diggs over that start.
But I'm saying that's the decision people have to make.
Yeah, I'd be very excited about it. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong decision.
Well, you got to be comfortable with CeeDee Lamb and Cooper Kupp as your top receivers.
If I'm in a 2-receiver league, then I'm much more likely to go running back there. But if I'm in a 3-receiver league, which we typically are, that also has a flex, I would like to lock in a top 5. See, the problem is, like I said, you run out of the top 12 by the middle of round 3. So you're just in such a better spot to have a top 5.
Yeah, I think like what he said before, though, that there's like more of a top 9 as opposed to a top 12.
Well, okay. So then tell me if you disagree with this. So Adams, Hill, Diggs, Hopkins, Ridley, that's 5. Metcalf, Jefferson, Keenan Allen, that's 8. AJ Brown, McLaurin, that's 10. Yeah, I guess it's 10.
Did you say Robinson?
I did not, because I don't view him as having the same.
Okay, that's silly. He's in that group.
Okay, then 11. And he's going 40th overall. McLaurin's going 35th overall. Everyone else is top 32. So, like I said on yesterday's show, if I really felt I could get Terry McLaurin late in the 3rd round in a 3-receiver league, then I'd probably go running back. I can't advise that. I think it's too risky to bank on him getting there.
Well, I just don't. I think that there's a much bigger difference for you between Terry McLaurin and Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp than there maybe is for me.
True. Right. So you're more comfortable.
Right.
Those guys there.
Yeah.
Right.
And for me, it's, Robert Woods and Kupp and Lockett and CeeDee Lamb.
And I like those guys there too, but I'd be thrilled if they were my second wide receiver. If they were my first wide receiver, I know I'm not going to do backflips, but obviously I'll have a better running back.
Right. But then you lose the opportunity of a better second running back,
Yeah,
because then you're, reaching for Devontae Woods.
Of course. Well, I do that. All right, Jamie, give me your tight end strategy.
Take one of the top 6. Otherwise, close your eyes and, try and figure it out as best you can. Again, it's a sliding scale. Kelsey in round 1, Waller and Kittle in the 2-3 range. The next 3 guys are going to be so all over the place for whoever you're asking. For me, it's Andrews, then Hawkinson, then Pitts, but that's not the ADP. It's typically Andrews, Pitts in some order, and then Hawkinson's the 3rd guy. But after those 6, it's such a gamble. I like Logan Thomas. Dave's going to tell you probably Jonnu Smith. Heath will tell you Noah Fant. There's a different guy for all of us, I think, in that range. I think we all like those guys respectively, but it's just a tough proposition. I had this decision to make in the podcast league, with Todd Rohn, so we shared the team with, and it was round 4, I think it was, to take either Josh Allen, Kyle Pitts, or Mike Davis. And for the first time, I was leaning Pitts. At that point, Hawkinson and Andrews were gone. And we thought, okay, let's get the running back instead. And we ended up with Gronk. So that tells you where you fall to. Now, Gronk could still be very good, but Mike Davis and Gronk versus, we ended up with Kareem Hunt. We could have had Kareem Hunt as our RB2 with Pitts at tight end. That could be a little bit better in a PPR.
Yeah, and like I think 3 of my last 6 drafts I've missed, and I would like Jamie said, top 6. I'm okay in full PPR with Fant or Goddard as well. I feel pretty solid that I didn't get a good tight end, but I've got a starting tight end. You still feel good about Goddard though? No, I'm sorry. I meant Fant and Logan Thomas. I was going to say Goddard because I've drafted Dallas Goddard in the 12th-ish round in 3 of my last 6 drafts because I missed that first 8. And I would just say it's really, really, I feel important to not miss that, whether it's 6 or it's 7 or it's 8, like find out how many guys after that top 6 that you feel good about or even okay about as your starting tight end. And don't miss that group, because then we're just throwing darts. And streaming tight end, I write about streamers every year. That's the worst position to try to do it because you're just trying to guess who's going to score a touchdown this week.
I want to talk about something here. I want to go back and not necessarily correct myself, but clarify something here. So thank you for your tight end thoughts. I want to go back to running back.
You weren't listening to them. You have no idea what we said.
No, you said find your something and blah blah blah. It is really important to note that if you're not in an analyst draft and you're looking at the 60th overall pick, so if you had the 12th pick, or let's say you had picks 10 through 12, and you're looking at your 5th round pick, the end of round 5, there is a good chance that even a Myles Gaskin or a Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds, obviously Javonte Williams will be there, Raheem Mostert, maybe Darrell Henderson. A lot of those guys, I don't know about all, but a lot of them may be available. So that is big because, as I said, I did the draft today on Fantasy Pros, and they were all gone by that point, I'm pretty sure. But that's not typical. So I'm looking at ESPN and Yahoo ADP. I'm looking at our ADP. It does seem like if you have a late pick in round 1 in a 12-team league, by the time you get to your 5th pick, you're going to have a decent group of running backs to choose from there. So I guess what my point would be then is if I go running back, wide receiver, I do not feel the need to take a running back in round 3 or 4. I feel very comfortable going running back in round 1, receiver in round 2, receiver, and then getting my RB2, and maybe even a third running back in rounds 5 and 6.
Now is that right there, like that approach is where you've gotten to the point of, oh crap, I've just drafted Dallas Goedert in round 12 and he's my only tight end, or Jonnu Smith or whoever. Because if you do that, then you're at the end of rounds. I mean, you might be able to get Noah Fant or if you like them, but that's kind of ruling out the tight ends if you go with that approach.
Yeah, okay, then fine. Then you could take Hawkinson instead of a third running back. Or you could take, I think you'd be reaching a little bit for Andrews or Pitts at the 3-4 turn. I wouldn't do that, but some people would. But yeah, you don't have to go 3 running. And maybe, you know what? Maybe I take Russell Wilson instead of a third running back or something. But you're right. If you aren't lucky enough to have Hawkinson available to you at 60th overall, ADP says you would be, then you can't get a top 6 tight end with that strategy. You are right. I think you're probably better off getting a top 6 tight end, or at least getting a top 5 tight end if you're not a Hawkinson guy with one of the first 5 picks without feeling like you're reaching, you know?
I don't, this is going to sound crazy. I think it might be more important to me to get a top 6 tight end than a number 2 running back.
No, it's not crazy.
It's not crazy, and like Adam, I've had this conversation with you several times. Like I think you tend to panic a little bit on that second running back as opposed to building toward your strength. Like you did that in a podcast draft.
My strength. That's the thing. It's like you want me to take my strength and make it even stronger and just neglecting running backs. And I don't think
you're not neglecting running back.
I am neglecting.
But like in that draft last night, you did this with the other team too, where like you're taking Javonte Williams, who may not be the guy early in the season. And you could take another player that is in a similar standing, maybe not with the same upside as Javonte Williams, but your other positions on your team are stronger. So like last night, for example, you could have taken TJ Hawkinson and Dak Prescott, along with Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, and AJ Brown. And you have such a stranglehold on so many good positions there that Javonte Williams may be amazing, but you had an opportunity, the way that the draft felt to you, how you built your team, to just add to what is a better situation, I think, for your team overall.
And you ruined a joke because I was actually going to start cussing in the chat and say that I quit the league. I thought you were going to take Hawkinson and Dak Prescott, because if you had Hawkinson and Dak Prescott and 2 top 10 wide receivers and Christian McCaffrey, like seriously.
Okay. Now Hurts may be on the level of those guys.
14-team league.
Yes.
14-team league. And I ended up with Jalen Hurts and Ben Roethlisberger as a backup. So if Hurts is good, it's not like I'm bad at quarterback. And my opinion in a deep league is that running back depth is almost like quarterback depth in a 2 QB league. It is so hard to get. They are the most valuable trade chips.
But you could have just thrown a lot of capital then at that spot.
How? I really couldn't.
You didn't get running back depth. You took 2 running backs in your first 8 picks.
I know I didn't, but imagine how bad my running backs would be if I didn't.
But you would instead of taking the 2 quarterbacks, you could have taken 2 running backs with those spots.
I think the point is like I don't necessarily disagree. Running back depth is more important in a 14-team league, but at that point, I think you'd already decided, or it would, like, correctly, you were not going to have running back depth.
Okay, fine, but I still need a starter. And yes, I got James White later, but I mean, no, look, Jamie and I disagree on this, and that is fine. If I go with like a hero RB, because I went McCaffrey, Jefferson and Brown at 28 and 29 overall, that's terrific. I'm not just going to play into it and just neglect running backs. I mean, I really love Javonte Williams. I think that pick is going to pay off. And I also believe that I say this on the air, so why not stick to it? In a 14-team league, take advantage of the depth at quarterback and focus more on the shallower positions. And that's what I did by taking Javonte Williams over Dak Prescott and still ending up with Jalen Hurts, who I like a lot. I don't regret it, but I totally get what you're saying. It would have been very fun. If I didn't take Williams, I probably would have taken Dak because I would have liked to. But
there's a very realistic chance that you're starting James White week 1 over.
I am. I absolutely am. He's part of my draft strategy.
Right.
He's part of my draft strategy. And I felt like my team was strong enough at that point where I could have James White as my RB2. And
I agree that your team was strong enough that you could have James White as your RB2.
But I still need another.
but would you have preferred Jalen Hurts with James White or Dak Prescott with James White?
I would have preferred Jalen Hurts and Javonte Williams with James White. Let me see with the running backs that were available when I took Jalen Hurts. Jamal.
No. You go to the next round because what would you have done there? Because then you really have to start looking at running backs there.
Why would I go to the next round?
Because you would have passed on Javonte Williams. You would have taken Dak Prescott and Hawkinson. And then what would you have done to the next turn?
Oh, he took Hurts and Smith in the next round.
Right. I took Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith at the next turn. I took Hawkinson and I took.
No, I know. I didn't realize that you took Hurts and Smith the next turn. So what would you have done there?
I would have probably taken Devontae Williams and
Jamal Williams.
No, I would not have taken Jamal Williams. I would have taken James White, who I got 28 picks later. Or Zach Moss or something like that. Or another. I wouldn't have liked any of maybe Giovanni Bernard. I didn't like any of the running backs there. I got lucky that I got James White because Nyheim Hines and J.D. McKissick went ahead of him. And I like him basically at the top of the group, tied with Gio. So I got lucky in that regard. But I cannot have a 14-team league with bad running backs. I just can't do it.
But you do.
Well, you had Christian McCaffrey. There was no chance you were going to have bad running backs.
Right.
That had already been determined.
I mean, like I said, deep league, take advantage of the depth at quarterback. That's what I decided to do. If a 12-team league, I think I agree with you, Jamie. I would have gone Dak. I think I told you that.
Well, I mean, we did our pick-by-pick draft, and people thought I made this team up from number 1 overall because I did a very similar thing that you did. I ended up with McCaffrey, Metcalf, and Jefferson. And then in round 4, I took Josh Allen. Now, it's different, obviously, because the running back situation was better. So I have Gus Edwards and Raheem Mostert on top of that.
Oh.
But I posted a poll, like, what do you think of this team? And somebody goes, this is so annoying. This would never happen. And I was like, you'll see. And you'll see who I did it with.
Who was your round 5 pick? You took Josh Allen and then who?
I think I went
Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards.
Oh,
yeah,
Gus
I'm
Edwards.
looking at it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, hey, it's easier in a 12-team league, huh?
It's much easier in a 12-team league. But again, Josh Allen was sitting there, and I wasn't going to pass him up.
Adam, I'm disappointed in you.
Well, come on.
No, because all you had to say to Jamie was, why didn't you lean into it? Take wide receivers.
Exactly. I just wish Gus Edwards had been there instead of Javonte Williams.
Right. I got to run.
All right. Yeah, me too. Thanks. Actually, Jamie, you have FFT and 5 on your schedule. So
you're going to have to wait till later, my friend.
Heath, please step up and do FFT and 5. All right. We'll talk to you later, everybody. Thanks for listening. And we got a live mock draft on Friday, and we have bold predictions on Thursday. Remember, we'll see you for the draftathon tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern at CBS Sports HQ and youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. Bye.